My name is Vicki Dobbs Beck, and I'm the VP of Immersive Content at Lucasfilm and ILM. I actually got interested in what became known as immersive entertainment in like 1990, so a long time ago, 35 years ago. And interestingly, it was actually when we were doing some educational multimedia with computer-driven laserdisc player. So a long time ago, a challenging technological setup, but at the time, that's how you created both interactivity and worked with, higher fidelity media. And I saw the power and the impact that that kind of storytelling could deliver. And so for the next 35 years, I was waiting for the technology to converge, really real-time technology converging with more classic film technology, because I thought once we could deliver high fidelity, premium quality, interactive experiences, that was going to be magic. So the way I would define immersive storytelling is that it is we put you into a world, into a story world, and you are an active participant with agency in the story experience. The difference, of course, between immersive storytelling and classic storytelling is usually there's a separation between you and the screen or you and the book, but in immersive storytelling, you are in the world, you are at the center, and you are a part of the story. I've always been interested in sort of two things. One is world building, which ultimately leads to transmedia. And I think that's actually where it all started, because the immersive technologies really allowed us to put people into those worlds. But it had to start with the world itself. And my passion has been not just putting people into a world, but actually creating an ecosystem of experiences built around that world and the characters that inhabit it in order to deliver countless stories. And those stories could be anything from curated stories to divergent stories like branching stories, or even eventually emergent stories where the people that come and visit actually influence how the story develops and unfolds. For me, storytelling is essentially one-way communication, and story living is a much bigger idea of where you're in a world making meaningful choices that drive the narrative forward. So you play the central role in that story experience. And I think I first realized that that was possible. It was a concept that was introduced when I was on a BAFTA advisory group where we were talking about the whole immersive space and what does it mean. And a white paper was written, and this term story living was used in the white paper. And it just really struck me like that is the essence of what we are trying to do and what immersive technologies like VR and AR and MR will allow us to do. It allows us to put you in a world and interact in a way that was never possible before. That's an interesting question about why was it so important to put the audience at the center. I think it's because it becomes so personal. And when it becomes personal, it becomes something that creates memories and lasts, is enduring. And I think that that was a realization that I had. It's not actually that I love being at the center of the story. For example, I'm not a gamer, but I did love the idea of empowering the person that's at the center. So the question about how do we choose the right story for the right platform is a critical one. And sometimes we actually start with the reverse, which is we are introduced to a new device, like the VR headset when it first came out. So in that case, I would say technology actually inspired the creative. We said to ourselves, okay, now for the first time, we can put people in the world of Star Wars. What do we want to do in that world? What is the unique experience that we can deliver in VR that could not be delivered any other way? So of course, we arrived at Vader Immortal, what became Vader Immortal, and we said, let's put you on Mustafar, in Vader's castle. But one of the things that was really critically important about that was that this was your story. You were at the center, and your unfolding relationship with Vader was the journey. And that was actually a little bit of a revelation, because I think the initial instinct was, it's a story about Vader. But in fact, it's a story about you. So Vader Immortal is an interesting project because it did go through quite a change. And when I think back on it, I realized that we approached Vader Immortal in a pretty classic, as one would who is in the film industry, right? With a traditional script, with a clear, coherent story. And in fact, in the original, you were going to be almost like a ghost character. The story was going to be unfolding around you. So you still had some agency. You chose where you moved, but you weren't impacting the story in any way, and it really wasn't about you. It was about what was happening around you. And about a year into the development, we had that aha moment, and we realized we were really not playing to the strengths of this new platform, of this new device, and that we really needed to make you the center. And that was a pretty radical pivot that required a lot of rethinking and redevelopment, but it was absolutely the right decision, and I'm so glad we had the courage to make that decision. So my job has really been to build the team and inspire the team to deliver on the promise of immersive entertainment and ultimately, hopefully, of transmedia. So I kind of hold the vision. One of the things that I have always known about myself is that I tend to sort of live in the future. I'm always thinking 3, 5, 10 years into the future. And what that allows me to do is develop a vision or a sort of North Star. And I feel like that was really what my core responsibility was to have a North Star and to help people on the path to achieve that North Star. And in building the team, it was really the team that brought that vision to life. And I got to be on the journey there with them, hopefully encouraging and inspiring along the way. My day-to-day life in this world is very, very varied. It is what it needs to be on any given day. So I try to stay very close to the team and to the projects. That's really important to me, and that's one of the things I've loved about the last 10 years is I feel really integrated with what it is that we're doing. While I'm not an actual maker, I feel a really key part of the making process or the conceiving process. I do spend a lot of time sort of nurturing industry relationships, because one of the things that has been fairly important to our evolution is to always not only be developing content that is at the bleeding edge, but also to be recognized in the industry as one who is pushing the boundaries and defining the state of the art. So I work a lot with our partners, and those partners include people at Disney and other parts of Lucasfilm, as well as partners like Meta and Snap, et cetera. Any of the companies who are interested in the immersive entertainment space and who are developing devices, et cetera. But also like industry thought leaders like yourself. And that's been really important because, again, because it has been an emerging industry and all of us care about it deeply and want to ensure its continued success, what I love about the community is that it feels incredibly collaborative and people are passionate about what we do, and I just want to make sure that continues. Honestly, one of the most transformative experiences or moments in my career was at business school. And I found myself following a fairly traditional path. Most people who were at business school either pursued an investment banking or a consulting career. And I went in for an interview for consulting. Well, the first interview I went for consulting was so horrible, I stopped it in the middle and I just said, I think maybe we should just save ourselves both the pain and just call it a day here. The second one I went to, I was actually interviewing with a partner at Bain & Company who was also a friend. And after we got into the interview, he said, Vicki, this doesn't seem like you. You're such a creative person and a creative thinker, and you're drawn to things that are creative. I think you should do something else for your summer in between your 2 years at business school. And if after that you come back and say, I tried it, but I want to be a consultant, then we can talk about a full-time job. And so I wasn't prepared for that feedback initially, but it was the best piece of advice that I ever got, and it fundamentally changed my career path. So I did do something creative between my 2 years of business school. I worked at San Francisco Ballet, and I found that I did indeed love being around creative people and creative industries, etc. And so after that, my career objective became to work for a company whose product was inherently creative, and it changed everything. As a woman in an industry that is, has a lot of technology associated with it, and therefore also, draws a lot of people from the games world as well as visual effects world, which are predominantly male, or at least were in the early days, I have had to learn to develop confidence in speaking up. And public speaking has actually really been a key part of that, because that has further developed my confidence. But one of the things about Lucasfilm is there are a lot of very strong female leaders. So I've been fortunate in that I've been in a company where female leadership is actually the norm, not an exception. But in terms of like, how have I tried to pass that on to others? I've done a lot of mentoring over the years, and particularly with young women with like computer science backgrounds, et cetera, who also have leadership potential. And that's actually been as inspiring for me, and hopefully I've been able to impart some wisdom to them. But that's actually been a very significant emphasis of mine for these last years. And I'm seeing more and more women. It doesn't feel like it did maybe in the early days, where like I was the only woman in a room of 20 or something like that. It feels much more balanced now. So I'm happy to see this evolution. I think some of the biggest challenges for audiences in relation to immersive storytelling is just the trying it. Like we need for mass adoption, we need to get headsets on people, right? And some of it maybe at some point it's not called a headset anymore, because actually when you think about it, the word headset is a little bit like it sounds like a helmet. It sounds like something that is separating me from the world. And what it does, we know because we love VR, for example, is that it invites you into a world, it transports you to a world that you couldn't have gone to any other way. So once you are in a headset, I think you're sold. But so often we have to try to entice people with 2D content, which is kind of ironic, right? So we're showing a video to try to encourage them to put a headset that's going to take them into a 3-dimensional space. And I just hope more people will try it. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, when they do try it, it's really important that they experience a high-quality piece of content. And that's something that's been really, really important to me, because there's enough friction about taking on and off a headset, is that if you don't have a great experience the first time, if it doesn't feel transformative, which it can, I think it's hard to get someone to put the headset back on. In order to bring immersive experiences to life, you actually need a lot of different kinds of talent. And in fact, even different sort of industries, if you will. We needed the people from the interactive or the gaming industry who understood game mechanics, who knew how to work in game engine, who knew how to design levels, who were very expert at experience design. But we also wanted to achieve the highest fidelity visuals and sound. So in that regard, we brought in the visual effects or film team, and we brought them together. So we have people who represent both industries who are working really to bring out the best in each other, because at times there's conflicts between, do you spend your budget on the visual fidelity and the quality of the visuals and sound, or on the actual experience itself, the interactions. And the key is to find that balance. So in addition to engineers and artists who specialize in visual design, we have sound designers, we have experience designers, we have a lot of artists whose roles sound more classic VFX, but they're in both the game and the visual effects industry, like lighting and creature development and so forth. So all the people who make the experience. Then, of course, we have producers and executive producers. We have people who play the role of essentially the role of director or creative director. We have writers. And then we have a marketing team, because once we complete all this, then we have to take it to market and support it with a campaign. So it's really like, it is a mini business. And we take things from concept all the way through production, release, delivery, and support. I think immersive entertainment, actually immersive technologies, I guess I should say, have application in a lot of different industries. The ones that I think are probably closest to entertainment but also most exciting are education, because I still think storytelling is incredibly central to effective education. So it's got a slightly different lens than pure entertainment, but it's still benefits from all of the same thing: great storytelling, high quality visuals and sound, well-constructed narrative, etc. I think healthcare is another area that is quite interesting and has been benefiting from immersive entertainment. That's probably a little bit more skills-based, specific skills development, but I do think it has a very significant role to play. And I think as we start to see really good AR glasses, I believe that the AR glasses are going to become ultimately ubiquitous, and they're going to be necessary in almost every line of work, and everybody will be more effective and knowledgeable and more capable because of it. It'll be like a different form of tool. I am a huge fan of location-based immersive storytelling experiences. I think that Star Wars Secrets of the Empire that we did with The Void was one of my all-time favorite experiences that we created. And it was one of my favorites for a number of reasons, some of them specific to what location-based entertainment enables. The first is you can deliver scope and scale, right? And you can invoke all of the senses because we control 100% of the environment. So that has been true of Carne Arena, Star Wars Secrets of the Empire, and the other location-based experiences that we've done. The other thing is that it was a shared experience in the case of Star Wars Secrets of the Empire. So the fact that you were with 3 of your friends, what I noticed about it is it wasn't a really long experience. From like the time you entered the void to the time you left, it might be 30 minutes, but it was so impactful. And people talked about their experience together. Rather than what was actually happening, it was how they felt about what they were doing together. And that, for me, goes back to that kind of the importance of community and community building. And I continue to be a huge fan of location-based experiential entertainment. I think that we're starting to find ways to make it make business sense as well. So that gives me hope that that it's, on a trajectory again. I think the one core principle that I have carried with me has been has been perseverance in support of possibility. You just have to have patience, you have to push, you have to learn how to influence, and you have to have a vision about what the future could be like.